doesn't care about you. That's why you need a medical emergency kit. It contains life-saving medications like ivermectin, Z-Pak, and antibiotics. Stock them before they block them.
This is a special report.
Knowing how to invest your money is harder than ever before. Dealing with stock market volatility, record debt, and terrorist attacks requires new thinking. At U.S. Asset Management, we can help you see the world more clearly so that you can move beyond the chaos and invest with confidence. Call us, visit us online, or drop by our office. U.S. Asset Management, helping you make better decisions with your money.
We have Matt Wolfson with us. I'm going to go ahead and bring him in. Matt, how's it going?
Hi, it's great to see you, John. Great to see you, Todd. Thanks for
having me. Good to have you on. Matt, by the way, is a contributor to the Miami Herald. He does some work.
Miami Independent.
Or Independent, excuse me. And,
definitely not the Herald.
Yeah, not the Herald. They would never let you on there, probably.
They wouldn't. They really wouldn't.
The Miami Independent, and that is a CDM asset as well, a contributor. He contributes there. Glad to have you on. This whole idea, we've kind of teased this on a couple of shows, this whole idea about what's going on with some of the real estate down in South Florida and what's going on there, and interested in hearing some of your reporting on what you're doing. I had a chance to read a little bit of it and want to hear that and have you go ahead and launch on that.
I really appreciate that. I mean, one of the reasons I'm so committed to this is, well, first of all, I lived in New York and I saw what rezoning in the city did, starting in 2002 with Michael Bloomberg. My own view is that the rezoning of the city, 40% of the city, and the displacement of the middle class is the root cause of pretty much everything that's going wrong in New York today, because it created this feudal city between, the haves and the have-nots. And the haves don't really care about crime because they're protected from it. And they want cheap labor with illegal immigrants. I mean, the have-nots have no power, and so I see real estate as the driver of that. And when I moved to Miami, I moved from the left to the right. I moved from New York to Miami. I saw Miami's a very different city, but I saw some of the same trends. So that's the first reason I was committed to doing work on it. The second was that, the Republican Party's crucial swing base of voters, the reason, as I understand it, that we won last year, was working and middle-class minorities, particularly Hispanic, also Black men. People who live in Miami and living here and watching what's going on with the real estate development, they're the ones who are the most affected by this. So this is actually an issue. Republicans are not so much anymore, but traditionally associated with big business, conservatives. This is crony capitalism, government-backed capitalism that are hurting our voters. And so I think it's a major issue just politically to use against Democrats and to help our voters.
Matt, I was on the Miami-Dade Republican Executive Committee up until December for a couple of years, and we saw that influence even there to where the control of the politics, and I know you've written a lot. You've written, I think, 3 or 4 pieces for us already.
And thank you, by the way. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. And we're going to want that to continue because it's great content. But I think that you could make the case that the political control happens on the left and the right in Miami. And then that because of the money behind this real estate and the policies behind it, the common man, Joe Bag of Donuts, really doesn't have a chance to get into this structure of power. What say you to that?
I think that's right. I'm cautious because it is a bipartisan thing, but I'm cautious in how I describe it because I haven't dug into that aspect of it enough yet to make what I consider to be a fully informed comment.
Sure.
The way I would describe it now is that Republicans, some of them genuinely, want Miami to be a world tier city. The original, I think it was called the 2021 plan for Miami, or the 21st century plan was passed in 2009. And that was under a Republican mayor that allowed an enormous amount of rezoning in the city. And what it did, this isn't Miami-Dade County, which is what I'm mainly writing about because the mayor is much more powerful than commissioners, but In the city, the rezoning, a lot of the rezoning we're seeing, particularly in Brickell, which is called the Manhattan of the South, a lot of the rezoning was based on a 2009 plan that basically made it easier for developers and administrators to work together to push plans through outside of political oversight. So it's exactly what you're saying. The common man was being shut out, and it was in the name of development and making Miami a global city, and it was under Republicans. And my own view is that this started, and again, I don't want to say it definitely, but I think it started first because of the profits, and also because people don't see the costs. I mean, everyone thinks growth is great. Well, you kind of have to have lived in a place where things really went wrong, which is where I live.
Right.
So delve into that, Matt. Talk about how that impacts like some of these communities that you've written about where, they're being offered, money to move. And it really, I mean, there's a lot of like tactical issues that they're doing, and low income housing is a big buzzword.
Yeah.
So go into that. I sorry to interrupt you, but
please, whenever you want, please. Yeah. I can go forever, which is a problem. The two buzzwords here, and this is actually something the Trump administration can fix. I mean, I want to write about this because now that it's in control of housing and urban development, it can fix what I'm about to say, which is the buzzword is affordable and workforce housing. Mm-hmm. That's one. And then the other is mixed income housing. Now, these terms do not mean what they're supposed to mean. What they're supposed to mean, what everybody says what they'll mean, is that they'll help, a working class senior who's, getting $1,100 a month from Social Security and a little help from their family. I mean, people like I report on in Miami who, for example, lived in Little Abner mobile trailer park, which is a trailer park, but it's a trailer park where the residents, it's in Sweetwater, Miami, by the Everglades, where the residents have actually, welded their houses to the ground. It's a neighborhood. They've lived there for 50 years, 40, 30, and 40. And many of them have actually been there that whole time. The issue is they rent the land itself. The land itself is owned by Raul F. Rodriguez, who's a developer whose dad bought the land and made it into a trailer park. This is a lovely neighborhood. I mean, I've been there. I walked around. People know each other's names. The houses are houses. I mean, some of them have columns. They've put in, tiles. I mean, it's nice. Their kids come to visit. It's not necessarily what you think of when you think of a trailer park. It's a neighborhood. Right. These are people with a stake in society. They're law abiding. There's no crime over there, but they don't own the land. Yeah. The land is owned by Rodriguez and his company CREI Holdings. And what Rodriguez is doing is he's displacing all of them, all 3,000 people by May. From this past November to May, he's displacing them, kicking them out, giving them essentially a pittance, $14,000, which, is not enough to cover rent for more than, 8 or 9 months in Miami. And many of these people are seniors. I mean, many of these are refugees from communism, in Cuba. And what Rodriguez is doing is he's displacing them. And he's displacing to build affordable and workforce housing and mixed income housing. And what that is in practice is apartment buildings. Now, He's already built 3 of these buildings, and the Miami Herald did a puff piece on him, 2 years ago, where they interviewed 2 residents and says it's the best place in the world. Now he wants to displace all of the other homes to build buildings on them. And I went to one of these buildings. There's no sense of community. Nobody looks you in the eye when you walk past. The people don't have any control. I mean, if it's your house, you have some control. If you live in an apartment and there's elevators, I spent last year in a high rise, a bunch of relatively upper income people, and we're all reduced to, cattle in an elevator when it goes down, right? Of course. Not that I'm upper income, but what they're doing practically, Todd, the effect on the ground is to take away control from people. Take away community from people in the name of profit, because Rodriguez is getting money from the county. I mean, he's gotten at least $6 million from the county, which in turn is getting money from housing and urban development in DC. So
that can be shut off.
Let me ask you real quickly, Matt, because and you may or may not be able to speak to this, but back about, I don't know, 8 years ago, 10 years ago, Obama came out and he was doing a lot with urban housing and affordable housing. What he was in essence doing is trying to move people into established neighborhoods, people of with higher net worths, property, higher end property. He wanted to come in and build apartment buildings, just like what you're talking about. Come in and build these what they call affordable workspace housing. But he was doing it in places to try to bring it into, places that were used to be considered middle class, but the property values were much higher, and he wanted to kind of push that in there for the school systems and for the services, whatever reason. Is this kind of what we're seeing here with this whole same kind of idea of urban development, urban planning? Is that what we're looking at?
Yeah, and I think it's key when you say he wanted higher income people, because the trick with affordable housing and what the liberals here want, and some Republicans, mostly Democrats, I think, what the key to affordable housing is, you can make $90,000 and live in a neighborhood right now under one of the new developments, Overtown in Miami. The average income there is between $18,000 and $30,000. Under mixed income housing, the way it's pegged, you can make $90,000 and live in one of these new developments. So yeah, that's exactly what they're doing. They're using the fiction of mixed income and affordable housing to get tax credits to build these giant buildings that are, by the way, not under the control of the people who live in them. The people who live in them, I live in Coral Gables right now. Coral Gables was built 100 years ago by people who lived in Coral Gables. They cared about Coral Gables. These people don't live in Overtown. They want inexpensive housing where they can cater to a higher income market and get federal and county support to do that. And the people who end up, I'm so glad you brought up Obama, because the people who end up benefiting are Obama voters.
And the Obama agenda of changing the suburbs and
into mixed,
bringing in high density housing into vintage communities that just get destroyed, because then you have all the education requirements of the children,
all the infrastructure, all the
traffic,
the resources, everything. And look, the whole idea behind that, building there's a place in Dallas, Highland Park, and it's a nice upper end area of town of Dallas. And what did he want? He wanted to build all these mixed, this affordable housing right there on the border of this thing, so that they could put them in, get them into the school systems there, and it just piggybacks off the back of the property owners and the people who are living in those areas, really.
Well, there's also an interesting trick, because what somebody like Obama does is he uses the label affordable housing. He then decides to make, Obama types decide to support these developments. People who live in the neighborhood say, well, we don't want this. And then the pushers of this development get to say, oh, you're racist or you're classist. Well, they're really not, because you're not helping middle to lower income Black and Hispanic Americans when you do this. You're helping comfortably off people who are earning $100,000 or more a year. Many of them, in the case of South Florida, from out of town. So, people who've come the last couple of years for the climate, for whatever. So not only are you hurting property owners in the area or higher income areas, you're also using these fictional terms to act like you're helping people who need help, and you're not.
It's just social engineering. That's all it is. It's more social engineering, right? How do people, interesting, and this is something that I think is important that this audience sees here, because we're seeing it in Texas as well. You're seeing it here in Arizona, this whole idea of this encroachment of this in the name of this affordable housing.
It's federal control, and they take the zoning. The state takes the zoning, so the towns no longer have any control on their own towns, and then they just wipe out all these neighborhoods and, vintage. There are places in Connecticut where this is the cradle of liberty, 400-year-old homes, and they're getting wiped off the map.
Yeah, communal living, and that's all that is. That stuff's right there is just that is that is just classic communal living right out of any kind of Soviet history book or even down in Cuba and places like that. So I mean, that's what they want. They want you all stacked into buildings and living on them.
No, it's that's so well put. It's Marxism done through crony capitalism. I mean, that really is the
two come
one
together.
Of these guys, I will say, one of these guys in Miami, Tony Cho, he's a big developer down here. He's doing something called the Magic City Innovation Project. If you actually look at this guy, he grew up in an ashram in a cult run by his grandmother, and he is recognizably, essentially communist. I mean, if you look at what he's saying, he masks it, but my own argument, I can't prove it, would be he really does come from that view. He's just using capitalism, crony capitalism, government-backed capitalism to impose it.
Exploiting open markets to try to get his point across.
But closed markets, yeah.
Yeah, right. Matt, how do people follow you if they want to get on to what you're working on? And
go to my website, oppo-research.com, oppo-research.com, or follow me on Twitter at x__left.
Excellent.
And he's also at the Miami-Independent.com.
Miami Independent will be stacking your stuff in there as well.
And it's an honor to be there. Miami Independent is the only publication in Miami that's the only newspaper in Miami that's telling truth. So thank you, Todd.
Thank you, Matt, for the content.
That's great to hear. Hey, thank you very much, Matt, for coming on.
I really appreciate that. Thank you, John.
Take care, guys.